Good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Adams, and I'm responding to this week's post Federal and State Government Involvement in Higher Education. The first question that we were charged with was: in your view, what are the key roles that the state and federal government have and continue to play on our higher education system, and how have those roles differed? Some of the roles that I feel that the federal and state government have played are with, of course, funding and opportunities for pursuit of higher education through grants, federal aid, and things of those nature. Now, the federal, when it comes to the roles differentiating, the federal government focuses on funding for research, accountability of those funds, and regulation with regard to how the regulations for those funds are spent. The federal government, in my opinion, looks at the big picture, but they have opened a lot of doors for students from all walks of life to pursue higher education. A couple of the opportunities that the federal government has provided, the Moral Act of 1862, GI Bill of 1944, the National Defense Education Act of 1958, and of course the federal Pell Grant. All these are giving different types of students the opportunity to pursue higher education. On a state level, state governments are faced with issues such as the escalating demands of student diverse populations, economic constraints from federal deficit, competing priorities for public and philanthropic funding, also the instability of political leadership. With that one, state governments they change their state legislatures, and so those legislatures may have differential agendas from legislation to legislation. So that is a constant struggle on a state level. Um, Historically, in this week's readings, historically, the states have provided the legal framework for which colleges and universities operate, institutions operate, Um, but more specifically, looking at some of the constraints from the federal government, uh, when you look at the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Environmental Protection Agency, OSHA, FERPA, Title IX, all these regulations have represented a burden or seeing hundreds of unfunded mandates from the federal government. So when state institutions accept these funds, they're also inheriting some unforeseen mandates that come along with what the government has to offer with these services, or these funds rather. Second question: in what ways has the government intervention both helped and hindered higher education? One of the biggest um, forms of assistance that the governments have provided is, of course, opening doors for students to pursue higher education, which is always a great thing. Um, and also provided opportunities for the growth of the higher education profession in itself. So, just being able to provide that assistance for achievement to the next level is a way that the governments have helped. When hindering, the strain between the roles of state and federal governments is a hindrance in itself, because there are certain policies that come with federal assistance. There are state constraints on a state level, and so when those two are constantly in strain with one another, it causes issues with students being able to have access, being able to enroll, and that can affect enrollment, retention, things of that nature, and also the accountability. In reference to the video that we watched last week, one of the statements that was made in the video is that the federal government controls the soul of higher education, but also the federal government feels that state governments aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, um, those are just some of the ways that governments have helped and hindered higher education. So, thank you for watching, and until next time.